Hello, Dawn Moore at Allegiance Title Company. I want to use today's video to talk about, again, appraisal contingencies and ineffective special provisions. I get a call at least once or twice a day about appraisal contingencies that someone either sees written in a contract or wants to write in a contract. And I have to spend time explaining why that provision is ineffective. Let me talk about the one that I am seeing most commonly now because of this multiple offer market. I see statements that simply read, "Buyer will pay the sales price in this contract irrespective of the value shown on the appraisal." A simple statement like that is ineffective for its intended purpose. First, there is no contingency built in the contract that the appraisal must match the sales price. That statement in special provision implies there is. The only contingency built into the contract that is dependent on the appraised value is the loan amount. If the buyer cannot get the loan amount because the appraisal is so low, then the buyer has an out. The special provision has to address the contingency. So if you're wanting the buyer to pay the purchase price shown on the contract irrespective of the appraisal, what you need to go on to say is that the loan amount will be adjusted and the down payment will be adjusted accordingly. Inevitably, a buyer who is willing to adjust the loan amount, putting more cash down to compensate for a low appraisal, will want to put a floor on that appraisal. This way, he is not subject to putting cash down that he doesn't have. Any special provision that is added to the contract that states the floor for the appraisal that the buyer is willing to accept simply works to give the appraiser permission to come in at that low value. Is that really what the buyer wants? The way to deal with the appraisal is through the loan amount contingency. The more cash a buyer is willing to put down on a piece of property, the less impact the lender's appraisal will have on that contract. The less cash down payment a buyer puts down, the more impact the appraisal will have. And although the buyer puts in a certain amount for the loan contingency, if the appraisal comes in such that it will support the buyer getting a higher loan amount, the buyer has the right to do so. It is the buyer's contingency, and they can adjust the loan terms. Another special provision that is popular reads something like this: appraisal has to be done within 14 days. And that's all it says. My reaction to that contingency is, so what happens? If the appraisal is not done within 14 days, what happens? Does the contract terminate? If it terminates automatically, it terminates for the buyer and the seller automatically. Or does this really mean the buyer's in default for failure to get the appraisal within 14 days? And if the buyer's in default, does he owe the earnest money to the seller? Does this provision actually put the lender on the spot to where they lose their right for property approval under paragraph 4A1? The lender is not a party to the contract. I do not think this contingency keeps the lender from also approving or disapproving of the property, whether through another appraisal or this particular appraisal. This clause does not do what I think people are asking it to do. But on the other hand, let's say the appraisal is done within 14 days. And let's say that the appraisal comes in such that we now know the buyer will not be able to get the loan amount specified in paragraph 4A1. What happens? Does the contract automatically terminate? Or were we also leaving it up to the buyer, as under paragraph 4A1, when the property is not does not satisfy the lender underwriting requirements, it's the buyer's contingency to terminate the contract on or before closing. So although the appraisal is done within 14 days and we know it does not support the loan, does the buyer have to terminate immediately or waive the contingency? This statement doesn't say that, and the buyer can wait all the way up to closing to terminate the contract for failure of the appraisal to support the loan amount. Please understand that these contingencies that you write in the contract are intended for a particular purpose, but are often ineffective. Obviously, I prefer for you to deal with it within the terms of the contract under the loan amount contingency. This can protect both your buyer and your seller depending on their intent. Again, the more cash down payment, the less impact an appraisal from the lender will have. The less cash down payment, the more impact the appraisal will have. I hope this makes sense, and I hope you can deal with these appraisal contingencies using the terms of the contract rather than writing special provisions. At least now you're aware of some of the problems that these special provisions can create. Allegiance Title appreciates your support, and we love doing business with you. So I look forward to seeing you in one of our offices soon. Thank you.